your notes? Good evening. My name is Jason Johnson. I'm an alcoholic. Man, I'm sober today only by the grace of God and the solution I found in the big book. Shane, I just found out Shane is responsible for coffee. And he's supposed to get me to the airport, so I might need a ride on Sunday. You know what I mean? So if you have a problem with the coffee, it's Shane. That took a lot of focus off of me. I'm not Patty O. And, man, all I can hear is one of him, one of them, one of me. Think I can do it. If you didn't know her, you missed something. You missed something in Alcoholics Anonymous, and you're going to get to hear her son. And it's just an honor and a privilege when I got asked to do steps 1 and 2 and to fill in this spot. It's kind of it's an honor and a privilege. Oh, sorry, these guys are in this. Can you guys hear me in the back? Great, because I was kind of like crying. I was starting to feel bad, and let's just get right to this stuff. You know what I mean? I have a sponsor, I have a home group, and I have a service position at my home group. I just switched. Well, I don't see anybody but black, but it'll be all right. It's just like drinking. Well, we got about 45 minutes now. Are we done? Are we good? Everything I just said was, it was great. You should have been there. You know what I mean? There's some people here talking this weekend, and I'm like the weak link in this deal, man. There's some people here that I look up to. My sponsors here. I took Carl as a sponsor about 4 months ago, and I had to allow myself to be sponsored. You know what I mean? So I have to make that distance. I have to make that call at least once a week, more than once lately. And I try to see him, and he lives in California, but kind of works out because I get to go golfing, and I'm grateful for that relationship. I have a home group. I just switched my home group to Doing Life is what it's called. About 75% of those guys have done time, so I fit in a little bit better there. I don't feel so bad. I feel a lot better when I leave that place. But they knew that my service position was taking out the garbage at my last meeting, so they gave me that spot. And so now I take the garbage out for a bunch of convicts, and I fit right in. You know what I mean? Welcome to all the new people. You're wanted, welcome, and needed in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I hope you hear something this weekend that gives you some hope. You know, and welcome to all the people that traveled from all over the distance. I was complaining about coming from Oregon, and there's some people that came a lot further. And when you read how it works earlier, I just thought of the distance, how Alcoholics Anonymous has traveled and where it is today, and how I get to be part of that. And I get to hear Billy talk about how he just got here by seconds and inches, and I know that isn't his line, it's somebody else's, but man, it's a miracle we're in Alcoholics Anonymous. It wasn't always that way. I'm going to talk on 1 and 2. She read out of the book about step 1. I think I'll just go with that. Step 2, you better hope so. That's what somebody told me one time. And what I'm going to do is share a little bit about my experience, so I can talk about the powerlessness over alcohol and how my life became unmanageable, and then talk about how I came and I believe in a God that I didn't understand at all. I grew up... My first 5 years of life, I grew up in a relationship with my mom where my mom was an old hippie. I looked at Carla, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. I just thought, oh, that looks like my mom, you know what I mean? It's like my mom's here, I'm in trouble, Patty's up there, this could be a long talk, you know what I mean? My mom and dad got divorced, and I lived with my mom. My mom was an old hippie. We lived up in the woods, and sometimes we lived in a school bus. Sometimes we lived in a teepee. Sometimes we lived in a house that was built on the back of a truck. It had a wood stove in it. I have a scar from the wood stove. That's the only reason I remember that. I got a little too close to taking a shower or a bath in the river. But my mom was into harvesting. We would come back in the late October, early November and sell it. And that's how my life was. And I lived in this place where everybody loved everybody, but man, some of them people beat on each other. And I saw stuff happen up there, and stuff happened to me in that situation that a little boy shouldn't see, probably. But it didn't make me an alcoholic. It warped my thinking, but it didn't make me an alcoholic. And, I just thought it was normal. I remember seeing my mom just get beat up really bad. And then I'd see her loving that guy the next day. And I just thought that was normal. And that's how my life was. I didn't know it wasn't normal. You know what I mean? I just thought that's how life was. When I started going into school, getting ready to go into the first grade, we had moved back to town and got a house. And I'd like to say that house was like, a picket fence and all that, but it wasn't. It was one of those houses where I'd wake up sometimes and there'd be a bunch of people in the front room, and sometimes I'd wake up and there'd be nobody in the house. Sometimes I'd be there all by myself. And I mean, many nights I stayed by myself at that house. And what I would do is I'd pull those blinds down, I'd turn on all the lights, I'd turn on all the TV, and I'd try to act like somebody was in there. And I'd just pray somebody would come home. And I remember it was the night before I was getting ready to go into the first grade. My grandma, I was watching Happy Days. I hope none of this section knows what Happy Days is, but this section over here might, you know what I mean? So we over here were watching Happy Days, and, I was minding my own business. All the lights are on, everything, and the phone rings, and it's not a phone that it had caller ID or anything like that, or even voicemail or anything like that. So you had to answer the phone because it just kept ringing and ringing and ringing, and it was my grandma. And she started asking me questions how grandmas do before you go to school. Do you have your clothes laid out? Have you taken a bath? Have you eaten dinner? Do you have your new shoes? I mean, she's just going on and on and on. And I'm like, man, Grandma, I'm trying to watch TV. I need to go. And she said, well, let me talk to your mom. I said, my mom's not here. She said, where's she at? I said, she's at the tavern. The phone number's 282-440. If you call that, ask for Darla Johnson. The guy will tell you it's going to take a couple minutes, and she'll come to the phone, and she's going to tell you she's going to have one more pitcher of beer, and she'll be home. And it got really quiet on that phone, and my grandma said, give me that number again. So I said 282-4440. And she said, sweetie, when your show's over, I want you to go to bed and get ready for school tomorrow. And when you get up and you go to school tomorrow, be nice to the other kids and listen to what the teacher says. And I said, all right. So I hung up the phone. I remember I was laying there and I was watching Laverne and Shirley. And, because that's what's on next, right? And somebody knocked on the door, and I panicked, and I did what I always did when I was scared. I'd crawl underneath the end table, and I'd put all the pillows up in front of it, and I'd put a blanket over me so nobody could see me, because I figured if they're going to rob the place, they wouldn't look under the coffee table. And they kept beating on the door, right? And I'm just starting to panic, and I'm thinking, man, please leave. And then they start beating on the window, and I'm thinking, man, I'm going to die. And I hear this, Jason, it's Grandma, open the door. Oh, yeah, just like that, I felt better. You know what I mean? It's like, oh. I crawled out, and I opened up the door, and there's my grandma. She's standing there, and she looked like she'd been crying, and she looked mad, but she just looked at me. She just said, sweetie, get your stuff. You're coming to live at my house. Man, that's like winning the lottery. You know what I mean? It's like, all right, you know what I mean? Because at Grandma's house, there's Rice Krispie treats, there's homemade popsicles, there's cookies, there's sheets on the bed, and there's somebody there all the time. And I'm like, come in. You know what I mean? You don't have to ask me twice. So I grab my little bit of stuff I have, and we get in her car. We get home to her house, and I run up the stairs, and I'm running through the front door to go to get the cookies and the Rice Krispie treats that I know are there. And as I'm running through the front room, I hear this, hey! So I stop, and I turn around. It's my grandpa. And he's looking at me. He goes, what are you doing here? I said, well, I live here now. You know what I mean? And here's what I found out later. My grandma didn't ask him if she could come get me. She didn't run it by him or anything. But this is what he did. I remember this clear as day. He just looked right at me and said, yeah, you do, buddy. Come here. And he gave me a hug, and I fell asleep on that man's lap every night for probably the next 4 or 5 years because I felt safe. You know what I mean? I mean, there was nobody, there was no loud music. It was just safe. And, my grandpa, he didn't know what to do with me. I needed alcohol probably right off the bat. I just didn't get it right away. I mean, I remember he was a retired railroader, didn't really do anything wrong, and he had me, right? And so he would stand there, and he'd look at me, and he'd rub his face like this. And he would just stare at me like a first date, where it's just awkward. You know what I mean? We'd have long moments of silence, and then he'd go, maybe you should just get in the car. We get in the car and we go drive around. But he took me everywhere. I remember I wasn't an easy kid. I was one of those kids that probably, I just never thought anything out. I remember when I robbed my first Kool-Aid stand. I was going into 6th grade, and it's kind of funny now, but it's unmanageability is what we're talking about, right? And so I remember I got a bicycle. I just got done watching Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid or something like that, and how they would rob banks and they'd take hostages. So I figured I'd rob this Kool-Aid stand, and I rode my bike with a cowboy hat and a bandana and my BB gun, and I robbed the Kool-Aid stand, and it just didn't go the way I thought it should have. So I took a kid hostage, and I tied him up to a clothesline pole. But at my house, you eat dinner at 5:30. There's no other way around it, right? And so back then, people just yelled out, dinner! I just laid everything down, said, I got to go, I'll be back. You know what I mean? And everything was great till the police showed up. And, back then, it was like when the cops came to your neighborhood, everybody came to your neighborhood. It was like a calling card, you know what I mean? All the little old ladies came, all the kids came. And I remember standing in the backyard thinking that the knots wouldn't be that tight if he wouldn't have squirmed. You know what I mean? And I'm trying to explain this to my grandma, and my grandpa just starts laughing, right? And my grandma goes, what the hell's so funny? He goes, you just can't make this up. You know what I mean? And so my grandma tells everybody, Jason, you're grounded. My grandpa's like, whoa, I didn't do nothing wrong. Don't ground them to our house, ground them to the block. You know what I mean? So that's what happened. I got grounded to the block, and he always had my back, but he never really wanted to go all in. You know what I mean? And I remember he bought me this BMX bicycle. I mean, he was always trying to get me to do stuff that wasn't getting me in trouble, but he had bought me a BMX bicycle. Before that, I had one of those, I think they were a Stingray where they have the handlebars like this and the banana seat, just not really cool. And so he bought me this BMX bike, man, and I thought I had arrived. You know what I mean? I thought, man, this is the best thing. So I hadn't even rode it yet. And I took it on the back porch, and I lowered the seat, and I put the handlebars forward. And then I had this, number thing I wanted to put on the front of the handlebars, but the brakes were in the way, so I started taking them off. And my grandpa walks out to the back porch, and he says, hey, bud, what are you doing? I said, well, I'm modifying my bike. He goes, what exactly are you doing? I said, well, I lowered the seat, I put the handlebars forward, and now I'm taking the brakes off so I can put the sign on the front. And he looks at me, and he says, well, how are you going to stop? So I did what he did. I just went like this because I never really thought about that. You know what I mean? And I looked at it for a little bit, and I said, well, Grandpa, I think this is what I'll do. I'll just drag my foot on the back tire, and when it slows down, I'll just jump off. You know what I mean? And he looked at me, and he said, man, when you crash, land on your head because you have nothing up there to hurt. And he walked off, man. And I was like, that old guy don't know anything. You know what I mean? And sure enough, he was onto something. So I'm taking it around front, and where I grew up, everybody parked on the street, and there was a grass strip, and then a sidewalk, and then about 20 concrete stairs, a little sidewalk, and about 10 stairs up, wooden stairs up to this front porch where our door was. As I'm coming around the side, my friend says, man, I bet you can't ride your bike down them stairs. I had never even rode it, but I said, yes, I can. So I took it up on the porch, and he was right. You know what I mean? By the time I hit them concrete stairs, there was no way to get my feet off the pedal. I mean, I was just holding on. This is way past anything I thought, and needless to say, I crashed into my grandma's car and I split my head open on her mirror, right? And I'm bleeding, and the only thing I know how to do is cry and run. And, and so I'm just dazed, and my grandma comes out, she's asking me questions like, what were you thinking? And some other things that weren't really polite, but she wasn't waiting for the answers. You know what I mean? She was just screaming them in a row, and finally I just told her I didn't think I was going to make it that far. You know what I mean? It was way past anything I anticipated. And so we're in there. And this is how my grandpa is. We're in there and we're washing me up. My grandpa hasn't even got out of his chair. He's still watching the news. This is like a typical Tuesday for him or something. I don't know. And, my grandma says, Gerald, you need to get up and take him to the hospital. He's going to need some stitches. And my grandpa gets up all kind of grumpy. And he grabs his keys. He goes, let's go. So as we're walking down the stairs, he goes, boy, it's a good thing you took them brakes off, huh? I said, yeah, but I landed on my head. You know what I mean? And we just laughed. And that's how our relationship was, man. When I would get arrested and go to jail, he would bail me out, he would lecture me, and then we'd laugh about it. And he'd take me to get something to eat or something to drink. I lost my license before I could drive because I just was not good at stuff. But one thing was consistent about that man, he always showed up. He was there no matter what. Even when I think failure to appear is there for a reason, so I just don't go. I'm that kind of guy. When I get a court date, I don't go till you catch me. I'm a got-caught guy. You know what I mean? I'm not one of those, hey, I need to turn myself in. I'm not one of those guys that goes to treatment. I just don't stop till I get caught. But he would go to court, tell him where I was staying, what I did for a living, how much I could afford for a ticket. You know what I mean? He was just that kind of guy. He would give somebody, he would spend $1 to get somebody back a nickel if he thought that it was theirs and they dropped it. He was just that kind of guy. He was just a good human being. My grandma, on the other hand, she was like your mom. She loved me no matter what. You know what I mean? She always wanted the best for me, and she always thought the best of me, And I'm telling you what, I was not an easy kid, and I was not the best of kid, I remember being I got into middle school, and I hadn't seen a recess like in 3 months, which is no biggie for me, because you get to know the counseling staff a little bit better. You usually get better food. So I'm in this conference. I've been in, counseling sessions for a while now. It just didn't happen lately, but I've been in those for a while. But I'm in this thing for about 3 months. I hadn't seen a recess, and finally I was coming out to go home, and I see my grandma walking into the school, and I thought, man, I'm going to get a ride home, because I think I got kicked off the bus is what I thought. And She goes, no, sweetie, we need to go in and talk to some people here. So we turned around, we walked in, and there was a round table like this, and there was 4 people kind of sitting like you guys are, and there was 2 seats on this side, and we sat down. And they proceeded to tell my grandma everything I had done in the last 3 months. The actions I had taken, I had no self-control, I didn't listen to anybody, and it just went on and on and on. And I remember looking at my grandma, and she was just sitting there, you know what I mean? And she had that look that she had when she picked me up and took me to her house, where she just looked beat, and they just kept going and going and going. When they were done, my grandma says, is it okay if I say something? And they said, sure. And she said, I'm not going to deny Jason did any of those things. He lives at my house. I get it. But he's a good kid. He's got a good heart. There's a good person in here. Because every morning he runs down to Mrs. Harrington's house and he throws her paper up on the front porch before he goes to school so she doesn't have to come down the stairs. And Shane, the young man who works at the store, who's simple-minded, every time I see Shane, the first thing he asks is, where's Jason? Because when Jason's around, nobody picks on him, and he always picks him first for sports. I know he's got a good heart. Nobody told him to do those things. There's a good person inside of there. It's our responsibility to tap into that. And I had a great year. I didn't get put in a different class, and I made it to recess, and people just treated me different. But that's how my grandma was. She just loved me. She always saw the best in me. She was a good Christian lady. She went to church 2 or 3 times a week and once on Sunday. And I remember I told because this is my only rodeo. This is kind of like the middle of nowhere. And really, I don't mean it in a bad way. Sorry, Judith. The weather's a little different, but now I know why you have big families. Sorry, Carl. That was a squirrel moment right there. That kind of went sideways. So what happened is I went to a rodeo, you know what I mean? And it was a Saturday, I went to a rodeo, and man, I just fell in love with the rodeo. And the next Sunday I went to Sunday school, or the next day I went to Sunday school. And needless to say, I got kicked out of Sunday school class, because I just wasn't complying to their needs or rules. And I got sent in this thing. And a Baptist church where my grandma went, they didn't have no little number that went up on the screen. They didn't have no little pager. They had to walk down. The deacon would walk down and tap her on the shoulder and pull her out of church. And I remember she came into that office, and she was not happy. And she said, let's go. I was like, all right. So I get up to go, and this guy says to her, he says, Hazel, I think Jason should maybe stay home for a while until he learns how to use some self-control. And my grandma spun around. She said, listen to me. With the enthusiasm he has for life and the mind he has and the energy he has, he might just be the next pastor of this church. I'm like, whoa. I don't want to be a pastor. I want to be a rodeo clown. You know what I mean? And she looked at me and said, that's cute. Get in the car. And here's how she is. When we were driving home, she said, you want to be a rodeo clown? I said, yeah. She said, you be the best rodeo clown you can be. And that's how she was. She just loved me no matter what. I didn't think stuff out, as I can tell, but I had family that loved me no matter what. I came from a great family. I came from people that loved and gave me everything I needed. I heard a guy named Billy Smith said, I was raised right, I just went left. And I get that. I started drinking in the 6th grade. I got that bicycle might be the problem. That might be why I'm in AA, really, now that I think about it. It's that bicycle. I rode it over to my buddy's house, and we were going to sleep in the backyard. And his mom comes out, and she says, all right, I ordered you guys a pizza. There's $10 on the counter. When it gets here, stay in the yard and pay the pizza guy. And we're going bowling. We'll be back later tonight. I'm like, wow, that's great, right? So the pizza comes, and my buddy Leif says, hey, pizza tastes better with beer. I had never drank beer that I remember, but I said, yes, it does. And he went down, and he got a case of Lucky Lager. I don't know if they had that here, but they shouldn't. And he brought it up, and we drank 2 or 3 beers. There was 3 of us. And, man, it just was great. You know what I mean? We're playing in the backyard, but all of a sudden I got food poisoning, and I started getting really dizzy. So I told him, man, I need to go home. I don't feel good. I think there's something wrong with that pizza. And so I rode my bike home, which with no brakes is pretty, that's commendable, really, now that I think about it. And when I got home, I went into my house, and I went right to my room, and nobody came and checked on me. Nobody, my grandma, when I was sick, my grandma would put a towel on the pillow. She would put a bucket by there. She'd give me a little glass of water. She'd put night lights everywhere. She'd open up every door. So if I had there was none of that, man. It was like crickets in that house. And I'm sick all night. And finally I fall asleep. And next thing I know, my grandpa's at the end of my bed telling me, get up. It's time to go to work. I'm like, man, I'm in the 6th grade and I don't even have a job. You know what I mean? What is wrong with this guy? You know what I mean? I said, I don't feel good. He said, if you're going to drink like a big boy, you're going to work like a big boy. Now get out of bed. It's like, he's pretty serious, you know what I mean? So I get up, and as I'm walking out to go to work, my grandma hands me a warm egg salad sandwich and a glass of milk and tells me, have a great day. Yeah, and we swung by, we picked up Leif and Sean, and we went and picked strawberries. And it's against the law to pick strawberries now, and should be. You know what I mean? I made 27 cents, I think. So, I mean, and it's like 40 years later, I still remember that day. And I remember getting sick and picking strawberries, getting sick and picking strawberries, getting sick and picking strawberries. And my grandpa sitting on the back of his trunk, reading the paper, drinking coffee, and laughing. You know what I mean? And it took me a long time to even smell a strawberry, like 30. You know what I mean? And I remember looking at my friends and said, man, I'm not drinking ever again. And they said, what, you're not going to drink? I said, yeah. And they said, you didn't like the booze? I said, I don't mind the beer. I just don't want to work anymore. You know what I mean? I'm done. You know? And I quit cold turkey. No AA, no treatment, no police officers, no nothing. Just, I'm done. Until I got to high school. And when I got to high school, I started drinking. And my wife says it well, too, like this. You know, is what I found out is I could start drinking on the weekends, but if I save my lunch money on Monday and Tuesday, by Wednesday, my other buddies would be saving their lunch money. Thursday, we'd be trying to figure out who we were going to shoulder tap to buy booze for the weekend. So I played sports and I drank, and that's how I did it. And, you know, I get a minor in possession. Like I said, I lost my license before I turned 16 because I would always forget to run. I wanted to stay with the booze, and it's not good when you're not 21. But I hung in there. You know what I mean? They just give you a ride home and a ticket. And, you know, nobody was going to really jail. Nobody was getting hurt. I mean, we were just having fun, you know, and I didn't think anything about it. You know what I mean? I just thought it was just normal. You know what I mean? You hid it from your grandparents and you drank. Every once in a while I'd get caught. And like I said, I'd lose my license, or I'd go to church and they would pray for me. That happened a lot. You know what I mean? I don't know how many people put hands on me, sprinkled water on me. We did stuff Baptists don't even do. You know what I mean? Trying to get me sober. But we did her. And nothing really helped. You know what I mean? I just liked the way alcohol was. You know, in 1989, alcohol took a different for me. You know, there's two sides to this story. There's a police report and my side. So I'm going to go with my side. I borrowed a motorcycle at a party to go deliver somebody else's substance to these people, and I somehow didn't notice the police following me, and I crashed. So what happened was they said I stole a motorcycle, got caught with an ounce of cocaine in my pocket, and I got attempted to elude. But what I forget is I didn't watch that show Cops, where the ending is where you crash. And I woke up in a hospital in ICU and not knowing what happened. You know, just wondering if I'm going to live. And this lady said, you're going to live, but you're going to lose your left leg. You know, when she said you're going to live, I was okay with that. That was good for me. I asked her what happened. She said, you're in a drunk driving accident. And I said, I was the passenger, right? And she said, no. And, you know, right then and there, I told myself I'll never drink alcohol again. You know what I mean? Because stuff happened I didn't even realize happened. You know, and I remember the police coming in and reading my rights and explaining stuff to me. And I tried to ask them, how do you know I stole the motorcycle? It was me. They said, I waved at everybody when I left. And I said, how do you know it was me that you were chasing? I was the only person at the crash site, you know. So we just agreed it was me. All right, I'll do it. So to this day, there's two stories to that. I'll go with those. And I got out of that hospital thinking I'll never drink again. But what happened is that anxiety and that fear kicked in. And I started drinking, you know, and I started drinking in a way that it was just making me feel better. And I had a story, man. I could go to anybody's house and tell them, man, this is what happened. And people would let me sleep on their couch and they'd give me whatever I wanted and I could drink whatever I wanted. And it got to the point where I started lowering my standards to keep up with my quality of life. And I was ending up in, you guys call them trap houses nowadays. We call them, it was everybody's house until the police came and then nobody knew whose house it was. You know what I mean? Everybody collected rent until the cops came. It's like, it ain't my uncle's house, you know what I mean? So we all get kicked out. But that's how I was living. And what would happen is I would just drink and I'd live in this place and I'd do what I had to do. And I couldn't really work, so I was getting good at doing other things. And my life was just getting miserable and the power would always get turned off. And so we'd buy candles and then we'd go steal the water out of the neighbor's house. But you don't steal it, you just borrow it. And you pour it in the toilet so you can flush it. I mean, we're doing all those kinds of things. And about every month or so, my uncles would show up. And they were not happy. And they say, man, you need to call Grandma. I go, what for? Just call her. She's calling us. She's called all your friends. She's calling the hospitals. She's calling the jails. All she does is call. Has anybody seen Jason? Anybody know where Jason is? Is Jason okay? Can somebody go find Jason? So they would come and get me, and they'd take me to a payphone, and I'd call my grandma. And I'd talk to her for a little bit and tell her I love her and tell her I had a job, and I'd come see her tomorrow. And I couldn't, you know what I mean? Because I drink. Not because I'm a bad guy. I just start drinking. You know what I mean? And I couldn't stop. You know, and this went on and on and on. And every once in a while I'd show up. I didn't want to go because, you know, I learned today in recovery that, man, when you're out there, you're kind of the lucky one. I sit with people today and I sit with families of these people like my grandma that must have just been, like your mom must have just been nutted up, scared and in fear, not having anything in their body like we have. I'm out there and I'm able to make my decisions all right. I'm able to make the way I feel all right because alcohol does that for me. And I would just drink. You know, on December 4th, 1997, one of my uncles showed up at my, I was living in a tent in the backyard of the house. I got kicked out of the house, and so I'm in a tent in the back. And wasn't that bad, really. Would be here, but it wasn't that bad there. You know what I mean? And my Uncle Leroy showed up, and he said, come on, your grandma's been in the hospital for about a week or so. She's been in ICU, and they just took her off of life support. She's not going to make it, and you need to get up there and say goodbye. I said, I don't want to go. He said, I didn't ask you. Get in the truck. And said, all right, because he's a little meaner than I am. And I get in the truck, and he hands me a pint of vodka and tells me, chug it. And so I chugged it. And, you know, when we got to that hospital, we got in that elevator, and we walked out. And my whole family, I have a pretty big family at the time. They all came from California. All my relatives were there, and they're in this waiting room, and then there's a room where everybody can go in 3 at a time. And I remember when I got off that elevator, I didn't look up. You know what I mean? Because I didn't need anybody in there to validate that what I was. I already knew I was a piece of crap that wasn't going to amount to nothing. I was pretty good with that at that point. I was okay with just drinking. I didn't really need anybody to validate it. I didn't need anybody to tell me I was a piece of crap. I just knew it. And so I went and sat in this chair. My mom walked by me. She didn't say anything. My aunt came over, Sandy, and she said, you know, you're going to go in there in a few minutes. You're going to get a couple minutes, and then you need to get out of here. And I said, all right. And so I went in, and my Uncle Gary was there, and my Uncle John were in there. And so I grabbed my grandma's hand. I said, Grandma, it's me. And she opened her eyes and sat up. And we started talking, and everybody came around. And I did what I knew how to do, man. I just nutted up. You know what I mean? I said, you know, Grandma, I heard you're not doing well, blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of people that want to talk to you. I think I'm going to leave, and I'll come back tomorrow. And she said, okay. And so I told her I loved her, and she told me she loved me. And as I was walking out, she told my uncle, he's a good kid. He's going to do something with his life. There's a good person inside of there. It's just going to take some time. And I left, and I remember I walked home because I didn't know how to deal with that. You know what I mean? I got home, and I just started drinking. And I just became obsessed with trying to kill those voices and those signs in my head. You know, and a couple of days later, my Uncle Dale shows up, and he says, hey, your grandma passed. There's going to be a funeral. I'll be here tomorrow to pick you up and take you. At least take a shower and clean up a little bit. And I said, okay. And the next day came when he was coming to pick me up, and I hid in the closet with a bottle of Goldschlager, and I wouldn't come out. And I remember him knocking on the windows and knocking on the door, telling me, you're going to regret this. You need to come. And I didn't know what to do, man. I don't know how to do life. I'd given up on everybody. I'd given up on God. I'd given up on everybody. And I just drank, and they left, and I didn't make it to that memorial. And, you know, from there on, it just got a little bit worse. But about 2 weeks after this all happened, I don't know, something happened. I just got caught up in the moment, right? And so I had nowhere to go. I got kicked out of my tent. I had nothing going, and so I figured I scrounged up like 15 cents or whatever it was, and I called my uncle, and I asked him if he was going to church. And he said, yeah. And I said, can I meet you there? And he said, sure. And I knew if I went to church, he wasn't going to beat me up in front of everybody. But I knew I had a whooping coming. You know what I mean? There was no doubt about that. I had a whooping coming. So I already knew it was coming. But I figured if I went to church, I could probably get $20 and a meal, and I'd be on my way. And I go into church, and I sit in the same row my grandma does, and we're sitting in the 6th row, and all my family's there. And they start singing How Great Thou Art. And then they start singing Amazing Grace. Man, I just got caught up in the moment. And I looked at my uncle, and I said, man, I think I have a drinking problem. And the whole church went quiet. You know what I mean? My aunt told me later after she heard me talk that the song was over, Jason. It wasn't you. My ego all these years, I thought, man, they just stopped. He says, you think? I said, well, I might have a drug problem. It makes you feel better about yourself. And he says, what you're going to do after this? This is what I heard. You're going to come over to my house. We'll feed you. I'll give you $20, and we'll figure this out. And you need a shower. Remember that. So we get to the house, and because I hadn't showered and I had nothing in my body, so I was aching and I was sweating from the inside out. And I take a shower, and I come out of that shower, and my uncle's sitting there he has a phone book on the counter. He says, you're going to go to treatment. I said, I don't know what treatment is. He said, it's no time for negotiations. Look up a treatment center, call them, and you're going to treatment. And I was like, all right, you know what I mean? Anything for $20. And so I opened up. The first place is Portland Adventist. I didn't think treatment centers would be open on Sundays, but they are. The first one. And I told this lady answered. I said, I think I need to go to treatment. She posted me over to somebody else. And I said, my uncle thinks I have a drinking problem and I need to come see you. And she's asked me some questions. And she said, well, you can come here tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. at this address and we'll do an intake and we'll do an assessment. And if you fit our mold, we'll get you in. So I hung up the phone and told my uncle, this is great. I got an appointment at 8 o'clock. Give me $20. I'll meet you there. He said, no, you're staying the night here. Was bad. That was nowhere in my plan. He has a little dog. He has a plastic couch. He says it's leather. To this day, it isn't. I know it. I sat on it. And this dog's licking me all night. And I'm stuck to this couch. And it's just, and you haven't had anything in your body for a while. And you're like, yeah, it's not good. You know what I mean? He comes down the next morning and says, how you sleep? I said, great. And he said I needed a shower. I took a shower. And then when he went to take a shower, I remembered he had a liquor cabinet. And I felt better already. So I went to his liquor cabinet. I got some Bacardi 151. I poured it in a Coke can and started drinking. And when he got out of that shower, I was ready to go to treatment. And I remember we got into that truck and we're driving to the treatment center. I'm nah. And he goes, man, I smell alcohol. I said, it's not me. I'm going to treatment. And so that's a true sign that it's you, I guess. You know what I mean? I hear it all the time. Nothing worse than a newcomer saying, it ain't me. Yeah, well, it ain't me, so I know one of us smells like alcohol. And you just got in my car. And so we get to this treatment center. I made a huge mistake. I went to the restroom to hide the Coke can underneath the garbage bag in the garbage can so nobody would get it. That gave him time to talk to the treatment facility. And, it went bad. I had to answer some questions. I answered no to one question. I'm in treatment. And in a long story short, it just sucked. You know what I mean? It's December 29th. There's 4 of us. 3 of those guys needed to be in treatment. I'm just staring at him. As I started staring at him, I realized there's no caffeine, no alcohol too. No caffeine, no sugar, and no women. Well, the lady laughed louder than I laughed. You know what I mean? Man, we might be on the same length. You know what I mean? And I remember thinking, this is not good. Not that I got a lot to give, but those are big things in my life. And I was like, man, this place sucks. They go, oh, don't worry about it. This van's going to pick us up and take us to AA. I said, what's AA? And they said, well, there's caffeine, sugar, and women. I said, I'll go. How do I go? You know what I mean? You got to go ask Tim. So I went to Tim. I said, Tim, man, I'll do all your steps. I'll do this stuff. I'll be on time. I'll help clean up. I'll get a gold star, whatever you want me to do. Can I go to AA? He said, yes. I said, well, what do I got to do? He goes, all you got to do is sign your name on that piece of paper. I thought, man, I overcommitted. I should have just asked. You know what I mean? And so, about 3 years before this happened, my dad had called up my mom and said he wanted to pay back all the child support he owed. So I went there to get my half of the money, which I paid back after I got sponsored. But I went there and I said 2 minutes to him. I said hi. I took my money and left. Right? That's all I seen him. So I get in this van and I start saying that prayer. Please, God, don't let me know anybody in AA, and please don't let me owe anybody money. Because that moment in my career, if I know you, I owe you. That was my motto. And that's just how I was. And so we walk into this AA meeting. I try to hide my blue wristband. Sure enough, there's a pile of candy. There's coffee with caffeine in it. And there's these girls, but they're not really looking like, yeah. We weren't catching any vibes. It might have been my blue wristband. I don't know. But I look back and I see this guy sitting in the back. I said, man, that looks like my dad. And they're like, that's your dad? I said, well, kind of looks like him. They say, you don't know your own dad? I said, well, I met him one time in like 26 years. And they said, well, you got to go say something. I was like, well, let's not rush into anything. You know what I mean? Let's have some more coffee and candy. So they have a break at this meeting. So they push me up there. I walk up to this guy. I said, hey, do you know who I am? He said, nope. I said, I think you're my dad. And he's like, Jason? I was like, yeah. And he gave me a big hug. And Alcoholics Anonymous changed for me right there. You know what I mean? I was like a burning bush. You know what I mean? I became the center of the treatment center. That never happened in that treatment facility where somebody met their dad for the very first time in AA. And it went really well. Family week was that week. And my mom showed up. And I forgot to tell my mom about my dad. And so we got extended 2 weeks. Took a lot of heat off me. But it didn't make me an alcoholic. You know what I mean? I just love alcohol. And, what happened? My dad was doing a 9th step. He was a member of Alcoholics Anonymous in good standing. And to me, what I found out, somebody asked me the other day what good standing is. Today, what I believe good standing is when your values and the principles of Alcoholics Anonymous match your behaviors. And that doesn't always happen for me. This last year, I've had some ups and downs, and I'm in some issues. But today, a member of good standing is when everything matches my actions. And that's where he was at. He was doing the deal. And man, he started taking me around to AA, and I was just glad because I had no other friends. You know what I mean? He was using me is what he was doing. I later figured out. He was like telling people, hey, this is my son. I met him in AA. Do you want to go to coffee? And then he'd leave me. You know, and he'd take some woman to coffee, and it was just like that. But he did hook me up with Julie. And I met my wife. He took me to a meeting to get a 30-day chip. She wasn't there, so I had to go back, hugged her, and she's here today. But we've had a couple marriages, so it's not. I'm not an easy guy to live with, you know. And I just started doing Alcoholics Anonymous, you know. And I got a family, and I had a job, and and about 3 years of sobriety, man. This is what I'm gonna tell you about sponsorship. I was just stealing a seat in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I had I was going to one meeting a month at 3 years. And I had a service commitment there. I was the raffle chair. And the only reason I was going there was to get my half of the money, which I paid back because of sponsorship. But I was going to this meeting, and Julie was going to this meeting. It was a Saturday, and I didn't want to go, and I was trying to get out of it. And so I got in an argument with her, and I asked her for a divorce. And she said no. I didn't know you could say no in the middle of a heated argument like that. She said, I'm going to the meeting. Maybe you should go. I said, screw AA. I'm not going. And so she left, and I went to my daughter's room. And I got a big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I got the Bible, and I wrote a letter of resignation to Alcoholics Anonymous. Yeah, I dated it and signed it. So that's even worse. You know what I mean? And so there's this guy named John. He ran Alcoholics Anonymous. He was like Cliff. He was the AA president of Oregon. He had all these not-agains that followed him all around. I call them not-agains. Some people call them sponsies or ducklings or whatever you want. I call them not-agains because every time they get called on, they talk about God, the allergy, the body, the session of the mind, the meetings, their home group, their sponsor. It's like, good God, not again. You know what I mean? Or they're greeters, you know, and you're like, good God, not again, not another one. You know what I mean? So he had a whole bunch of not-agains, like 10 of them, right? And so I walk up, because I'm resigning from Alcoholics Anonymous. I walked up to this guy, John. I hand him the letter. He reads it and starts laughing out loud, like Disneyland, and all the not-agains are coming around, and you know, and it's like, I'm like, this is bad, you know, and I'm glistening, I'm sweating, kind of like Brian was doing up here earlier. You know what I mean? It's just bad, you know what I mean? And he looks at me and he says, no. I said, what do you mean no? He goes, no, I'm not going to let you resign from Alcoholics Anonymous. And what accidentally came out of my mouth was, will you sponsor me? Yeah, he quit laughing. There was no more fun at all. Done. You know what I mean? And he told me I had to do these 5 things. Like I had to pray every day on my knees, twice a day. I had to get on my knees every morning and say, please help, thank you, amen. Nothing more. He'd see me share at a meeting. He said, nothing more. Don't talk. You're conning God. And if I made it through the day, I got on my knees and I said, thank you. I had to call him every day. I had to read 2 pages out of the big book. I had to go through the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous with him because he didn't trust me, I don't think. Here, we had an issue here. I had to go to 5 meetings a week, 2 where he was at. I was like, 5 meetings in 1 week? That's like a 6-month coin. You know what I mean? This is just bad. You know what I mean? And then try not to drink in between the meetings. If you do those things, your life will get better, and it did. You know, and it did for about 10 years. And that 10 years of sobriety, like Cliff says, you people started sounding like Charlie Brown. You know, I started thinking I'm not an alcoholic because that damn song, Amazing Grace. I'm not an alcoholic. I should have just not went to church. I got caught up in the moment. So I started taking unprincipled actions in Alcoholics Anonymous. And that's how I met this side of the room, right? And you know, I was doing really good at these unprincipled actions. And it was March 1st, 2007. I went to Les Schwab. I bought a car, and they put wheels and tires on it. And I pulled out of this Les Schwab, and the wheel fell off, and I crashed. And I was like, dang, that sucks. And they rented me a Chrysler 300. And it looked like a Rolls Royce, and I thought I had arrived. And so I was taking these unprincipled actions. And, you know, I was doing things sober that was on my 4th and 5th step. I was doing things sober that I was telling people not to do. And I was going to meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous, sitting in the back judging you. Needless to say, I met my buddy. Well, he's not I hate to say buddy. That's like in the police report, too. I met a friend. Let's say acquaintance. You know what I mean? That had been meeting every day for about 6 months or a year. And I picked up this substantial amount of something, and I'm driving down the road, and all of a sudden the cop cars swarm. And I don't want to say cars swarm, because I didn't know they were cops at first. Swarm my car, right? And I knew it was going to be bad, but I didn't know what to do, because this was a rental car, and I didn't know what to do. And I had 157 grams of something, so I did what every good drug dealer does at the time. I stuck it under the front seat, and I was going to say, it's a rental car, you know what I mean? I have a valid driver's license, proof of insurance. I've only been in it 2 times. It was the guy who had it before me. That was my story. But they had a different vision. And so they're walking around the car, and it takes them a few minutes, and there's more cops and more cops and more cops, and everybody's got a gun but me. And this officer, this is another bad sign, officer walks up to the window, and I roll it down like I don't know they're there. And I said, yes. He said, Jason, can you shut the car off and step up on the curb? And I said, oh, yeah, I can do that. So I shut the car off, and I open up the door to get out, and I hear this, and I look down, and the seat's going back all by itself. Yeah, it's not funny, really. You know what I mean? John made me write Chrysler a letter thanking them for doing for me what I couldn't do for myself. You know what I mean? And needless to say, it went all the way back, and my substantial amount of something was right in the middle of the floor. And you can't yell timeout or do-over. You know what I mean? Unmanageability right there in a nutshell. I was like, oh, man, this sucks. And so I shut it, hoping they didn't see it, and they did. And I got charged with commercial delivery, racketeering, intimidation of a witness, a gun charge, and just a delivery charge or possession charge. And all that was sober. And I remember standing on that curb thinking, boy, this ain't good. And it gets worse. You know what I mean? I got booked, and I'm in a holding cell with a bunch of guys, like the guys look like from Montana. And we're sitting in this holding cell, and all it says, da-na-na-na, meth watch, 2007. And there's my driver's license picture and a bag of dope and a gun and some. It made me look like a bad guy. You know what I mean? Really, it made me look like a drug dealer. It's like, whoa. And they're like, hey, that's you. And I was like, whoa, that's me. You know, and I knew Alcoholics Anonymous saw that. I knew my wife saw that. I knew everybody saw that the gig was up. You know, and what happened was I did what I told myself I'd never do. I put a needle in my arm and I started running. You know what I mean? And Julie divorced me, which was a great call on her behalf. Because at the point, man, I was lying, cheating, and stealing. I remember one of my lowest parts was Julie had let me come see my daughter. I had a 6-year-old daughter at the time, 6 or 7. And I'd come and see her if I looked like I slept a little bit, and I looked a little bit normal. And I'd get the shower, and I remember I was coming out of the shower. When Bailey was born, we saved all these coins, these quarters, and with the states on the back. And there's like 3 buckets of them. And Julie's coming down the hall going, you stole your daughter's money. How low can you get? You stole your daughter's money. And I remember thinking, yeah, I did. But what hurt me the most was my daughter started tugging on my wife's pants saying, please don't make my daddy leave. I let him borrow it. And I just felt like crap. You know what I mean? I just felt, how could it get any worse? And I left and I started drinking. You know, and I ended up I got sentenced to 48 months in prison. And that was because I just couldn't stop. You know, I would go to court and they'd tell me, go in front of the judge and she'd say, Jason, if you could go to treatment and get in some kind of program, I won't send you to prison. And I would go drink. And then I started appearing. I found out if you appear, they let you go. So I was on to a new thing. You know what I mean? I would appear, and then it got to this one time. She said, do you have your slip? I said, no. She said, that's 48 months in prison. You leave today. And, you know, and I remember thinking when she said that, I remember thinking, wow, that's like 4 years. She said 48 months. I thought it was 4 to 8 months. It wasn't. My attorney pointed that right out. But I remember thinking, my God, it stopped. Thank you. You know, and I ended up going into jail, and I'll just make it short. If you get arrested in Oregon, the sheriff's office has been running the jail system since the 1800s. They don't need your opinion. I gave them my opinion. I ended up in the hole for about 3 weeks. But when I was in the hole, I was sick. And I don't mean dope sick, and I was just sick. And I was scared, and I didn't know what to do, and I had nothing to put in my body. And I remember what you guys taught me. And I got on my knees, and I said, please help, thank you, amen. And I got up on my bed. And if I got any kind of relief, I got on my knees and I said, thanks. And I started doing that. And I got released out into population, and I went to my very first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. And the guy that brought that meeting into the very first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous was standing next to my dad at my very first meeting. A guy named Mike S. And he gave me a hug and told me he loved me. And it gave me hope. You know, and I remember thinking to myself, how am I going to ever address these people out here in the public? I didn't want to get out kind of at first, as I was scared. I didn't know how to address anybody. And there was this guy, Randy. He's one of my best friends. And before I got locked up, I stole $3,000 from him. And at that time, he had $1 in college, $2 in high school, and a boy with special needs. And I stole the money. And he's the kind of guy who would always call your phone and tell you he loved you and hoped you would get recovery again and wanted the best for you. You know, they kind of annoy you when you're trying to drink and use. You know, and they're just consistent. You know what I mean? And so I get a visitation. I'm thinking, yeah, I'm hoping it's somebody like a girl or my wife or anything, you know, and it's Randy. Oh, man. There's nothing worse than owing somebody money and you get locked in a closet with luckily there's glass there because I thought I was going to kill me. And it's Randy. He's sitting on the other thing. And what I learned is what you guys taught me. I invited God to go with me. And I sat down. I picked up that phone. I told Randy, man, I'm sorry for stealing that money from you. I'll pay you back. He said, Jason, I'm not here for the money. I'm here to tell you I love you. And it was Christmas time. And he said, my kids and my wife have come to me and they've given me their Christmas money. And they would like to know what Julie and Bailey would like for you for Christmas. Could we get them something? And I just started crying. What he did is that man gave me hope and showed me that if he could forgive me, how can I not forgive myself? And I got out and I started doing Alcoholics Anonymous. And man, I got on. I got released at 3 months and 27 days because some judges and my wife did some stuff. And I got released. I got a suspended sentence, and I got to serve my time in the community. I still can't go to Canada, but I don't care. Yeah, I do, actually, if you want to know the truth. It kind of pisses me off. But there's somebody from Canada, so I really don't care. You know what I mean? I guess I can go, but I got to fill out a buddy pass. There's another squirrel moment. But you know what? I got out and I started doing Alcoholics Anonymous. You know, and the part about the God thing, Steve Lee said is the best for me. He treated God like he owed him money. He knew he was out there. He just didn't want to run into him. And that's how I was raised in a Christian place, and I knew there was a God. I knew there was something out there. I just didn't want to deal with it. And I started trying to make a relationship with God. But what happened for me, I was every meeting has a Roy. And Roy's this guy. He sits out. He was my sponsor's brother, and he's kind of guy that they make a greeter, but they shouldn't. And so I walk up to this meeting. I said, "Hey, Roy, how you doing?" He said, "Screw you, screw God, screw Alcoholics Anonymous." I was like, "Man, Roy, I'll sit by you. It's a big book study. This will be great." Bad mistake. You know what I mean? So I go to this meeting. I'm in here, and I sit by Roy. It goes me. It goes my old sponsor, John. It goes Mike, who does nothing. He's the king of the Nottigans. I mean, he does everything perfect. Everything. Everything's on time. He shows up to everything. He's the leader. He's the one. He'll be the next guy. You know, like when Clancy dies, everybody wonders who's. When John dies, Mike's it. We all know it. It's that guy. And then a couple other people. Well, you read a paragraph at a time, and it gets to Roy's turn, and it's the third step prayer. So I kind of start laughing. Roy don't read. Roy just sits there and stares straight ahead, and people are starting to tell us, hey, what page we're on and all this, and I'm thinking, we started this meeting, what are you doing? So I read the third step prayer, John reads, and then Mike starts reading, and John leans over to me, he goes, hey, that was between Roy and God, don't ever get in the way of it. So I looked at Roy and I said, man, should have never sat by you. You have a problem with God, now I have a problem with John. It's basically the same thing. Screw this meeting. You know what I mean? And I get up and we leave. And the next morning, next day, Julie was like 6 months pregnant. I don't know how she was pregnant, whatever, as long as she was. And she calls me and says, they can't find a heartbeat. I said, what's that mean? She goes, we got to go to this thing and do an ultrasound or something like that. I said, what do I do? She goes, just meet me at this place. I said, okay. I called my sponsor, John, and I said, John, I have to go do this ultrasound. They can't find a heartbeat. I don't know what to do. I don't understand what's going on. What do I do? And he goes, Jason, calm down. I said, what's up? He goes, you know what? You're not the only person scared here. Your responsibility is to go with Julie, hold her hand, be present, and tell you love her, and don't say another damn word. And I said, all right. And we went there, and we found out we had lost the baby. And we had to go do this thing the next morning that was some kind of procedures to remove the baby, whatever it is. So we go to this hospital. It snowed that night. And in Oregon, when it snows, nobody drives in Portland. And we get to the hospital, and we get there really early, and we're sitting down in this waiting room. And all of a sudden, I see this guy going like this in the window. And I was like, oh, crap, it's Roy. So I kind of try to duck. You know what I mean? And he sees us, and he starts jumping up and down, you know. And I'm like, oh, God, here comes Roy. You know, can it get any worse? And Roy comes in, and he's like, man. And Julie's like, oh, Roy, hi. And Julie thinks Roy walks on water. I still think Roy's a little, whoo. But that's a whole nother story. I go, Roy, what are you doing here? He goes, this is a big deal. He goes, I found out he had taken the day off of work without pay, left his house 2 hours before that, had drove to that hospital, been walking around the whole complex, didn't know where we are, and our phones weren't on, looking through us, all the windows, trying to find us. And, we go upstairs, and we're in this waiting room, and they take Julie back, and we're sitting there, and Roy goes, hey, we need to pray. I said, I thought you had a problem with God. He goes, this is no time for my problems with God. He says, we need to pray. I said, screw you, screw God. And he got on his knees in that waiting room in front of all those people and started praying. And I remember at first I thought I was embarrassed. I was scared. I was sweating, and I was mad. How could he do that? I just lost a baby. My wife's in surgery, and now you're embarrassing the hell out of me on your knees praying. And when he stayed there the whole time. I think he slept. He said he prayed, but we've talked about it. And they called us back in, and he got up. And when we got up, people hugged him and thanked him. It was the finest example of Alcoholics Anonymous I've been around. And what it did for me is it gave me a relationship with a God I didn't want to go in all with. I saw that somebody else, when crunch time came, believed in something bigger than he was. And I did that, and I owe a lot to him. I could do a third step prayer in Starbucks. I really don't care. I'm not embarrassed or ashamed of my God. And that's something because of that man doing what he did. Life hasn't always been easy for us. I'm not a poster child for a great dad. You know what I mean? When my daughter was little, I was a screamer. You know what I mean? I like to intimidate them till they cry. And her friend Cody and her were over at our house one day, and I yelled at them so bad they hid in my daughter's closet and called Cody's mom to come get them because they were afraid of me. And Julie had to get on the phone and stop that and make it all right. And so what I did is I went to my sponsorship line. We have a sponsorship meeting once a month that we went, and I went to there, and you could talk about anything you want in that meeting that you can't talk about in AA. And so I got in this circle and with all these not-agains, and I said, I don't know how to be a dad. I want to kill my daughter. I want to kill my wife, and really I want to kill some of you all the time. And what do I do? And this one guy, Larry, who I can't stand, says, this is what you need to do, Jason. I go, well, great. Now Larry's giving me advice. He said, my kids love you. Every time we go to an AA event, the first thing they ask is Jason going to be there? And the reason that is because every time you see them, you hug them, you tell them you love them, you make sure they're entertained and they're fed. Why don't you start treating Bailey like you're babysitting my kids when you're having a problem with her? You'll do it that way. So that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. So I started doing it, and you know what I mean? Because that seems to be how life works for me. And my daughter was 13. She had a slumber party over at our house, and I was asleep minding my own business. It's like 2 o'clock in the morning. Julie wakes me up, tells me to go tell him to be quiet. I told Julie it's none of my business. I didn't invite him. So I got up and went to go tell him to be quiet. You know what I mean? And I get in there. And I open up the door, and they're doing what little girls do. They're bouncing around. They're on phones. It's just out of control, man. And I lost it. I yelled at them. I told them they need to get to bed, blah, blah, blah. I turned the light off, slammed the door, and I go back, and I'm laying in my bed. And I could hear myself thinking, is that the only example of Alcoholics Anonymous that the kids are ever going to see? Is that how you treat anybody's kids? So I get back up, and I go back in that room, and I open up the door, and I turn on the light, and they're all just staring at me, And I said, man, I'm sorry for yelling at you guys. I said, we just need to turn the TV down, turn the lights down, act like you're getting ready for bed because you're making Julie really mad. And they started giggling. I shut the light up, and as I was closing that door, my daughter's friend Cody said, I told you guys he would come back and apologize. That's because of what you did for me in Alcoholics Anonymous. That's because you were willing to call me on something. You were willing to share with me what you had given. You were willing to introduce me to something that I didn't have to use alcohol for. And my life has gotten really good. I started going through the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. I changed the car. I've done some stuff that I just allowed myself to be sponsored. The deal with my grandma, I'll end with this because I think I only get an hour, or an hour and a half. I can keep going? Yeah? All right, I'll give you one more story before I tell this last story. So I can't go to Canada, all right? So my wife and daughter are going to go on vacation, so they pick Canada. That might tell you how good of a father I am, you know what I mean? And so they get in their car and they take off and leave me with the dog. It's a big deal because the dog is, if I didn't bring a paycheck home, I'd be below the dog. I'm just going to tell you, the dog is the king of the house. She sleeps where she wants. She does what she wants. She goes to the bathroom. Somebody gets up. She's hungry. The dog gets everything. So they leave me with the dog, and they get in their car, and they go to Canada. And on the way up there, they're texting me at the border. You know what I mean? Like them going across the border, the agents, everything that just pisses a guy off that can't go to Canada. And they go up there, and they're going to go look at some house that's in a movie, or I don't know. So I'm getting all these texts and this, and all of a sudden the texts stop. There's no more video, there's no more texting. I'm thinking, man, they must have wrecked the car. My wife fell in love. They're leaving me. They moved to Canada. Stuff's going through my head. They ran up the credit cards. I don't know. I started playing Perry Mason, which some of you probably don't know on this side, but you side probably does know who Perry Mason is. All right, so I'm being a detective. There's no calls, and all of a sudden they show up, and they get to the house, and they walk in. And I was like, I'm up. I go outside and look at the car. No dents. You know what I mean? I walk in, and Julie says, I need to talk to you. I said, I know you do. She goes, I need to share something. And my daughter just takes off and goes upstairs. So now I know something's going on, right? There's no hugging, no kissing, nothing. It's just, she's gone. But you can't over-exaggerate. You can't blow up. You got to stay calm. So now I'm really on the edge. And I said, what happened? She goes, you can't get mad. I said, okay, I won't get mad. She said, Bailey got a tattoo. My daughter was 17. I saw a tramp stamp. I saw a stripper pole. I saw Aerosmith. And hey, if you're a stripper, some of my best crime partners are strippers. So don't stand in line to tell me I'm a stripper. You know what I mean? I'm okay with that. But when it's your 17-year-old daughter and you think she has a tramp stamp and all you can think is, I lost it, man. I went nuts. You know what I mean? I started calling people names, telling her she's going to prison, that you can't get to jail for 17, and I call up and I yell at my daughter and I'm leaving and I call an Al-Anon, and because I thought they know what attorneys to get because she's going to jail. And somebody's getting divorced, and and Al-Anon always hangs out with some people we know because he talked to Lori, and this is, and I tell the Al-Anon the story 3 times. Julie took Bailey up to Canada. They got a tattoo. She's 17. It's against the law. Somebody needs to go to prison. Somebody's going to jail, and it's not me. You know what I mean? Who do I call? Nothing. I say it again. Nothing. Say it again. Nothing. Finally, she says, you know what I heard in this deal? And I said, well, I asked her, I said, what do I do? And she said, you know what just happened here? You just told your daughter she's not beautiful or pretty. And you just said anything she does in her life is not going to be to your standard. And I'm like, that isn't what I meant. And she said, you need to go back and make it right. And so I did. And I pulled in that house, and I went in there, and Julie said, you need to go make it right. And at first I told her I think I overreacted. And she's like, you did. Even the dog's not, me and the dog are close. And the dog's on the cushion on that. And he's like, you're screwed. You know what I mean? You might be moving. I just moved up. You know what I mean? And dog bailed on me, and I get upstairs, and my daughter's she's on the bench. She's crying, and I had to tell her, man, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to blow up like that. I said, you're the most beautiful person I've ever met. I don't know how I got you, and I don't know why I deserve you. I'm sorry for acting that way. I don't care anything about what you do. If you're happy, I'm happy. And she said, Dad, do you want to see the tattoo? This is like really trusting God, you know what I mean? And I said, sure. She pulls up her shirt, and there's a AA symbol, and it says 1 day at a time, and there's these 2 hands. First thing I thought, you're not an alcoholic, but I didn't say anything, and we're not Christian, or we're not Catholic. Why do you got them hands? This is what was going through my mind, but I've learned in the last 5 minutes. She goes, you want to know what it means? I said, sure. She said, if it wasn't for Alcoholics Anonymous, you and Mom would have never met, and I wouldn't be here. And she said, the hand going like this is Mom's hand because she's always making the coffee and serving the cookies. And the hand like this is yours going up is like yours, Dad, because you're always welcoming somebody to AA or giving them a hand up. So now I'm crying. And I didn't think it could get any worse. And we were here a couple of years ago with Polly Pistol, and Julie's telling the story, and it's not as funny when Julie tells it. I'm just going to get that out right in the open right now. Her version and my version, same thing, not as close. Nobody laughs when she says it. They like turn me. So Polly's sitting over there. She's like, sweetie. And I'm on this side of the table. She's like, sweetie. Jason. I was like, what? She goes, what's it feel like when God kicks you right in the nuts? I avoid that lady like the plague. Somebody asked me, you want to speak there? Is Polly there? Yeah, no. I'll pass. If it was the international, I'd have to pass. That lady scares me. I had it about 6 months ago. I had to go to my daughter and ask her for a do-over being a dad. 6 months ago, I ended up in marriage counseling. Probably the best thing I've ever done. It's actually kind of cool, really, now that I participate in it. I usually go there just to be a victim, but now I go there to like, wow, this ain't that bad. You know what I mean? I'm always working on myself, and I'm learning how to be better. Something that's always haunted me is that deal with my grandma. Not going to that memorial, not going to that funeral. And basically, what happened is you guys gave me a belief in a God, and I would I would pray every day for like relief. I wrote letters, I mailed them. I've gone to that place and I sat at her grave and looked for hummingbirds, bluebirds, butterflies, dragonflies, ants, potato bugs, anything I could get, any kind of sign. You know what I mean? I've done everything. Everything's worked for a little bit. I've wrote letters. I've sent flowers. I've done everything that everybody told me to do in Alcoholics Anonymous. Every step I've done inventories on her 4 or 5 times, and I've done everything that I was supposed to do, but I couldn't get that relief all the time. I just couldn't get it. Then one day I got from Jimmy Jack, sent a text out. It was a story about a little boy, and he had 2 sisters, and he was the oldest one. The 2 sisters came along, and his parents started paying attention to his sisters, and he started getting jealous, but he knew his dad loved football. So he went and asked his parents if he could play football. He's just a little guy, and they said, yeah, sure, you can. And so they signed him up, and every game, his dad would come to every single game that he had, and he'd hug him after the game, tell him he loved him and how proud he was of him. And it just happened all through every game, all the way up through high school. He got to be a senior in high school, and his team made it to the state championship. And he's not a good player. He's the worst player they've ever had in their school history. And they're making it to school. They made it to the state championship, and it's 2 weeks before the big game. And they're at practice, and his coach calls him over and he says, come here, son. He goes, I don't know how to tell you this, but your dad had a heart attack today, and he didn't make it. And the little boy fell to his knees, and he sat there and cried, and he got up and he asked the coach, is it all right if I go home a little early today? The coach says, man, just go home. This is just a game. Go home and take care of your family. Don't worry about football. Don't worry about anything like that. Just go take care of it. And, the big game came, and he didn't show up, until about the fourth quarter. And when he showed up, he came running out. And the school had written a paper about his dad and everything had happened. And the little boy runs out, or the boy, he's not little anymore. He runs out into the thing, and he asked the coach, can I play? And the coach said, no, you're the worst. He's the worst person on his team. You can't play. But his team's losing. So finally the coach says, just go in and play. First play, the kid intercepts the ball and runs it back for a touchdown. The coach is just like itching his head. He says, just stay in there. And he gets down to the very last play of the game, and his team's down by 4 points. And the other team's getting ready to punt the ball, and their best kickers or runners are going to have to run it back to win the game. And this kid runs in, blocks the punt, and picks it up and runs it in for a touchdown and wins the game. And it's like a Rudy moment. They carry him off the field. Everybody's cheering and crying. It's just like TV. And that night, he's sitting in the locker room, and the coach is walking out to lock up, and he sees a young man sitting over there, and he walks over and he says, son, take as long as you need. And he says, okay. And he goes, coach turns around and goes, son, I need to ask you a question. He goes, you're the worst athlete I've ever coached. You can't catch, you can't run, you can't throw, you're slow, you don't like to be hit, but you show up every practice and you play every game, and you're just a good kid to be around. He goes, what happened out there tonight? And the young man says, Coach, I don't know if you know this, but my dad was at every single game I've ever played. The ones that you didn't play me in for 4 or 5 games in a row, the ones where I lost the game for us, after every game, my dad would find me and he'd hug me and tell me he loved me and how proud he was of me. And the coach said, that's a good man. And the young man says, Coach, you don't know this, but my dad was blind. And tonight's the first night he ever got to see me play. And just like that, I got relief. Just like that. Because I know that every time I walk into a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous and I see a new guy and I walk up to him and I shake his hand and I welcome to AA. Or I stand up at a podium and say, my name's Jason Johnson, I'm an alcoholic. My grandma gets to see me play and participate in life. And I believe today my grandma's up there at that big meeting, and when I die, I know she's going to be, my grandma and grandpa will probably be greeters, waiting for me. 2 reasons why. My grandpa won't believe it, you know what I mean? But if sometimes I close I can smell my grandma's perfume sometimes when I close my eyes. I know they'll be standing outside that big meeting when I get up to heaven. And I imagine my grandpa, he'll be there leaning against the car. He'll see me and he'll wave because he doesn't think I know where I'm going or I'm late. And he'll probably stand there and he'll probably rub his face like this and go, I didn't think you were going to make it. You know what I mean? But because of what the men like Carl and Cliff and some of the guys have hugged me and told me they love me, I'm going to be able to hug my grandpa and look him in the eye and tell him, thank you for giving me a safe place to live. But my grandma's going to be there. She's going to have her hands in the air. She's going to be dancing around probably in the parking lot, praising God and thanking Jesus. Probably tell my grandpa I told you so. But you know what she's going to do? She's going to grab me, and she's going to hug me, and she's going to tell me she loves me. And then she's going to pull my face down and kiss me right on the lips because that's what grandmas do. They're not politically correct. And she's going to tell me she's proud of me. Because of people like you, I'm going to be able to look her in the eye and tell Grandma it's the damnedest thing. These people in Alcoholics Anonymous that found a solution to their problem, they introduced it to me. And in doing that, some of them showed me a little bit of grace. And they introduced me to that guy inside of here that only you believed in. I owe that to Alcoholics Anonymous. If you're new here, admit to your innermost self somewhere down the line. Find a God of your understanding. Do the deal and trust it. And know this. If somebody's telling you have no meaning, no purpose, and no value, or telling you you have no worth, or people are telling you you just don't fit in Alcoholics Anonymous, I heard this, I can't swear, but she's telling me no. Look them in the eye and tell them to go screw themselves. Thanks.